When it comes to the question of which Final Fantasy characters are the oddest, Quina Quen is definitely near the top of the list. In this character analysis video, I'm going to be taking a detailed look at Final Fantasy IX's Quina and explaining why this strange character went from being one of my least favourite of the series to one of my favourite, along with why you should have Quina in your party the next time you play Final Fantasy IX, so make sure you keep watching. If you enjoy this video, it would mean a lot to me if you could hit the like button and also the subscribe button below. And while you're there, why not hit the notification bell too, so that you get notified whenever a new video is posted. Okay then, let's talk Quina Quen. The Final Fantasy games have always had their fair share of quirky characters, but it's only when you really look at Final Fantasy IX's Quina that you realise just how uniquely odd the character is when compared to other characters in the series. One of the reasons why I feel Quina Quen works is because, as strange as the character is, it's obviously a product of its environment, so to speak. Final Fantasy IX's overall design is quirky from start to finish. You only have to look at other characters like Queen Bran and Oglop Cid to see that, as well as locations such as Black Mage Village and Bran Bal. As far as Final Fantasy games go, Final Fantasy IX is much closer to being what you could call a fairy tale than other games in the series. As such, a character like Quina makes much more sense in the context of the world in which Final Fantasy IX's story unfolds. If you were to take Quina out of FF9 and instead put the character in more industrial, human surroundings, such as the worlds of Final Fantasy 7 or 8, then it would seem totally out of place. Speaking of Final Fantasy 7, in the previous video about Final Fantasy 7's Cait Sith, I criticised the character for being largely inconsequential in the context of the game, and one that sadly didn't live up to its huge potential. As such, you'd be forgiven for thinking that I'd have the same problem with Quina Quen. After all, I don't think anyone in their right mind, even the world's biggest Quina fan, would argue that the character is essential to the plot of Final Fantasy IX. As with Cait Sith, you could take Quina out of the game completely and it would basically make no difference to the way the story unfolds. However, as you've probably guessed, I much prefer the character of Quina to that of Cait Sith. I think the main reason for this is because of the way the characters are used in their respective games. Cait Sith, as I mentioned earlier, had the potential to be a much more interesting and meaningful character in the overall context of Final Fantasy VII. It is precisely because of the fact that its potential is wasted that the character, in my mind, ends up feeling rather hollow. With Quina Quen, however, I don't think there is any pretense about why the character is there. It is there primarily to provide comic relief. You only have to look at the character's design to see evidence of this. Quina Quen's design is basically farcical, and I don't mean that in a negative way, but rather in its purest form. That is to say that Quina is a comical, amusing and rather clownish character. Clownish in its appearance, its actions and also the way it speaks. With its puffy white chef's hat that looks like something the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man would wear, beady glowing eyes, an elongated smile and a ridiculously long tongue, Quina was obviously designed to look as strange as possible, like a more human version of Pokemon's Lickitung. And I think that, as a result, the character does exactly what it was intended to. Quina brings a certain amount of light-heartedness to Final Fantasy IX pretty much whenever the character is on screen. I mean, you only have to listen to Quina's theme or look at the character's battle animation to see that. However, even though I doubt Final Fantasy IX's creators meant for there to be that much depth to Quina Quen, I feel like there are certain other aspects of the character that deserve to be looked at in more detail. For example, I find it interesting that the game's creators chose to make the character genderless, primarily because there was no real need to do so. They could have told us, the player, that Quina was either male or female from the outset, and that would have been that. There would have been no reason to dispute it. Instead, however, they chose to leave this aspect of the character purposefully ambiguous. I don't think this is just because it was an afterthought, and that they couldn't be bothered to assign Quina Quen a gender. Rather, I think it ties into Quina's overall personality and the fact that there are many ambiguities surrounding Quina. What are his or her motivations for remaining with Zidane and the party in their fight against Kuja? How do we know he or she is trustworthy? What exactly are the Q, and why does their race seem so far removed from the events engulfing the rest of Gaia? And can a character whose primary weapon is a fork actually be effective in any way? We don't get that many answers about Quina's character throughout the events of Final Fantasy IX, and maybe the character is stronger for it. Maybe party members don't always need lofty ambitions or motivations in order to fight for a grand cause. Maybe sometimes all we need to know about a character is that they want to travel the world and eat as many different types of food as possible. I mean, that's as good a reason as any, isn't it? However, as I said at the start of this video, when I first played Final Fantasy IX, Quina Quen was far from being one of my favourite characters. In fact, I saw no reason at all to include him/her in my party. Quina seemed superfluous at best. I think the reason for this was because I took little interest in the frog catching side quest that you can participate in whenever you reach one of the marshes dotted throughout Final Fantasy IX. When I did finally start catching the frogs and actively trying to level up Quina, as well as gaining his/her blue magic abilities, it quickly became apparent how powerful the character actually is. Blue magic techniques such as level 5 death, limit glove and frog drop, yes, even frog drop, can inflict a lot of damage on enemies, while healing techniques like white wind or auto life can be hugely beneficial to your chances of winning tough battles. As a result of these abilities, Quina became a key member of my party, and I had a newfound respect for the character. Also, as mentioned earlier, while on the face of it Quina Quen is primarily there for comic relief, I also think there's a surprising amount of depth to the character that goes beyond merely being a figure of fun. Now you might say that isn't difficult given that he/she has no depth whatsoever when you first encounter him/her. But I think that Quina's own personal journey through the game is an interesting one. Take Quina's quote, for example. Each FF9 party member's quote basically sums up that character's personality, ethos and to a degree, individual insecurity. As the hero of the game and joint protagonist, Zidane is given the word virtue, while his ethos is that you don't need a reason to help people, which is of course extremely noble and befitting of a hero. On the other hand, Vivi's word is sorrow, along with the existential quote, "How do you prove that you exist? Maybe we don't exist," which relates directly to his poignant journey throughout Final Fantasy IX. Quina's quote, however, is by far the most selfish. "I do what I want. You have problem?" Presented in the typical broken English of the queue. What strikes me as interesting about this is the fact that Quina is instantly presented to us as something of an outlier, with a self-indulgent streak that is at odds with the other characters. The creators were willing to let the player's very first impression of Quina Quen be a negative one. Despite starting off on that rather abrasive and self-indulgent footing, by the end of the game, Quina actually seems to have developed into a much more stoic and reliable character, one who seems unfazed regardless of what situation the party finds itself in. I think that's why, actually, Quina Quen is much more than just a farcical, strange-looking character. He/she is a character that should be admired for their willingness to learn about the world and other cultures, and evolve from someone who relies entirely upon others to someone who can be relied upon by others. When we first meet Quina in the marsh near Lindblum, Quail says, "Quina, you in darkness, need some light." Quina is blind to the world, scared to venture out into it, and unable to even feed him/herself. Yet later on in the game, when you eventually reach Quan's dwelling and encounter the ghost of Quan, it is Quina who ends up imparting wisdom to Zidane, saying, "You still have a long way to go." It's little touches like this that end up contributing to the reason why Final Fantasy IX is such a fantastic game overall, and one in which even the most apparently superficial characters grow and learn as a result of their own personal journeys. Anyway, now it's over to you. I'd love to hear your thoughts on the character of Quina Quen, and what you think he/she brings to the game. Do you like the fact that the character is essentially played for laughs and used as comic relief throughout Final Fantasy IX? Do you think Quina is a meaningful character? Or do you have a problem with Quina and actually think the game would have been better off without such a character being included? Leave a comment below to share your thoughts. Also, if you enjoyed this video, it would be fantastic if you could hit the thumbs up like button down there and the subscribe button next to it so that you never miss a new Final Fantasy video. And don't forget to check out some of my other videos too. So until next time, thanks for watching.